YouTube is in the spot in order to just delete your account. Twitter can just, or X can just delete your account. Facebook can just delete your account. And you are censorship resistant in the sense that you are on the internet, so you can go to an alternative. So if you're banned from YouTube, you can go to Rumble or Odyssey or whatever other platform that's there, or you can host your own website and put your videos up there. So technically you are censorship resistant. The problem is that the moment you do that, or you're forced to do that, you're self-marginalizing. You no longer have access to the network effect that's there on YouTube, because everybody's on YouTube. Nobody's on your little website. Your videos might be out there, but your audience isn't. So this is where the problem is that NOSTR tries to solve.
Does that essentially mean that there is no free internet?
The nice thing about all this stuff is, like, nobody had to ask permission about using NOSTR, and nobody had to ask permission about implementing Bitcoin. Apparently, Elon Musk thought we were so important, but it was just a bunch of nerds trying to hack away.
Wouter, can you explain to someone like me who doesn't understand code, who doesn't know software developer lingo, and who is completely blockchain illiterate, what NOSTR is?
Yeah. So right from the get-go, blockchain has nothing to do with it. So perhaps that makes it a little bit easier. It does involve a bunch of cryptography. So that's where some of the similarity is. But let's get into it. So NOSTR is a protocol or a system that allows you to publish and maintain social networks online. And the reason for its existence is in order to facilitate both censorship resistance, or what positively could be framed as freedom of association, while at the same time maintaining network effect. And I'll go into all of these aspects later on. I'll just keep going. And how it does this is by allowing users to generate an online identity by themselves using cryptographic key pairs, and subsequently just publishing whatever type of publication that may happen to be, that could be a tweet or an article or a picture or a video or whatever it is that we share online, and provide it with a digital signature. And this digital signature subsequently allows the receiver to locally verify the authenticity of said publication. And this digital signature subsequently provides what is called tamper proofing, which means that the intermediary that is used to distribute this publication cannot tamper with the publication itself. So this means that we don't have to trust the intermediary in relation to the authenticity of the publication, which means that we don't rely on a particular intermediary in distributing this information. So it could be any intermediary that does this. And this, because we are not tied to a specific intermediary, this causes decentralization. And this decentralization is what solves for the censorship resistance, because it's not a particular intermediary that can stop things. We're flexible in switching between intermediaries. And because we are now directly interacting with each other based on these digital identities that we self-generate, we are able to maintain contact and networks directly, like in a more direct sense, and not dependent on the identity that is given or provided by somebody else. And hopefully all of this will become clear if I contrast it in how things work currently with the more platform-centric internet that we're using right now.
Before you go there, you said censorship resistant, but not censorship free. Does that mean that users, will they have absolute freedom to say what they want uncensored, or is there a catch?
So censorship resistance is a technical term that we use in the field of distributed computing, because when we are on the internet is always intermediated by somebody else. There is not a direct cable between my computer and your computer. There are a lot of computers in between our computers and our information goes through a whole bunch of hops in order for it to reach each other. And this means that you always rely on these hops to cooperate. And the nice thing about the internet itself, it was born out of the military for a military need, in order to have a communications network that is resilient and it doesn't fall down with the first bit of pressure that's put on it. So the internet itself, in the way it's constructed, is what is called censorship resistant. So you're able to resist censorship. So of course you're not able to exclude the existence of censorship itself, because you're fundamentally relying on intermediaries, but because you have flexibility in those intermediaries, and this is true for the internet itself, it can always route and reroute different ways, you're able to resist censorship. Now, what this means in the NOSTR context, and it's because this was the technical bit of the question. From a practical stance, this goes into the frame of that I like to say NOSTR is pro censorship. And what I mean by that is that because the user itself, because I as a user have censorship resistance and I'm not reliant on a particular intermediary, which would be a server, the server itself is now also free to censor in any way or a shape that it wants, right? It doesn't have to take some abstract notions of common good or whatever into consideration anymore. It can apply its own policies and moderation however it wants and for whatever purpose that it wants, because users are not tied to that particular server anymore. So if they're for whatever reason those users don't like that policy or moderation, they can always switch to some other party. So yes, users are just able to say what they want, but at the same time, nobody is obligated to facilitate that type of communication. And at the same time as well, is that this causes this notion of freedom of association, is that I can say whatever I want and I'm able to reach my audience that likes to listen to what I have to say. And the other way around is that I am able to follow whomever it is that what they are saying. So we're free to associate in this manner where we're resistant to censorship, but at the same time is that there's nobody in this system that is obligated to facilitate any of that communication going on. So in the most extreme case, it's like if nobody wants to facilitate you, you're going to have to facilitate yourself, and that's also possible.
Hmm.
Does that make any sense, Francisco?
It does. I think so. I think I got the gist of it, although I'm still trying to understand how. So no one has to facilitate you. However, I see how your servers, also known as relays, if I understand it correctly.
Correct. Yes.
How are you planning to keep the relays free from interference of, for example, some government legislation? Because we know the government has the power to crack down on anything they want eventually, even like things like Bitcoin, or they can render them almost useless. And similar as, for example, in the UK where I live right now, they're trying to ban X. I don't know if it's possible or if they make it. Or also during the last elections in the US, Meta and Google were forced to shadow ban certain content that the government asks. How are you going to come around this issue? Because then if there is a way for the government to infiltrate the relays to push a certain agenda, how is that not going to work in the case of NOSTR?
I see. So this is actually a complex topic. Because on the one hand, we have the realm of technical possibilities, both on the side of users and, let's say, on the side of governments to interfere on a technical level. And we have a political dimension and the practicalities around politics and political will. So how best to navigate this? It's funny that you mentioned Bitcoin, and you just suppose that governments have an ability to ban Bitcoin. China tried it; it's still there. It's even there in China because because from a political will perspective, and just to give this go into this example, China banned Bitcoin mining, and a lot of the Bitcoin miners left China, but they didn't actually all leave, because what happened is that in certain regions that were far away from central power, because China is a pretty large, vast country. So in certain local regions that were away from central power, mining still kept going because there was power generation, and these miners, they were customers and they were paying for this power. So for the local economy, it was actually, these miners played actually a crucial role. So then we get this whole notion of corruption and local corruption, where the I don't know what the positions are called, but let's say the local governor or the local bureaucrat.
Yeah.
It's in his interest to actually keep those people there, just lie towards the central government and saying, no, they're all left, but they didn't all leave, because otherwise the local system or the local economy would implode. we have this idea that, well, okay, if we extend political will and political coordination to the fullest extent, then governments are like all powerful. But in practicality, that's not actually how the world really works. So that we have to keep that in mind. And then from a technical perspective is, okay, let's say the UK government wants to ban X tomorrow. then they're going to hit a wall in the sense that, okay, now they have to going to ban VPNs as well, because now just regular citizens are just going to log into a virtual private network and going to access the eggs via proxy in the United States or another country that will allow them to do that. So we have the political practicalities and will in order to execute. And we have the technical dimension as to, if you want to shut down things on the internet, you have to become more and more totalitarian, which again,
Yeah.
China is a good example of trying that. We have the Chinese firewall, but even the Chinese firewall is not perfect. So this is a very complex domain. In the general sense, I have like two answers. So the first answer would be somewhere in this, in what I just described, and basically go to the pirate side of things. The other answer would be that with NOSTR, it actually relaxes a lot of the issues that go along here. Because with X is an American company that operates globally. So all these countries have opinions on what the moderation policy of X ought to be, and what happens on this one single platform that is actually run in America by a private company. And with NOSTR, all of this is decentralized. So local relays, like relays in a particular country, can just adhere to local laws. That's fine, because there is no pressure in order to, because not all these countries are trying to police one central node anymore. And we don't rely as a user, we don't rely on a central node anymore. Local laws can just apply to local relays in that manner. So it relaxes the situation in a bit. So the answer is a little bit of those two things, right? And on the one hand, compliance gets a lot easier. On the other hand, we have this fundamental catch me if you can situation going on.
I see. What you say does make sense, especially to someone who is at least follows technology and will at least bother download the VPN and use it. But I just see how this could be a small impediment for mass adoption for most people who don't get that, don't know that, don't even want to bother with that, who want an app ready to go on their phone, and if the local government or the state bans it, it's over for them. So that begs the question for me, who is NOSTR for? Is it for the average person? Is it for developers? Is it for tech enthusiasts? Who are you aiming this platform to be soon in the future?
So you activated my trap card, Francesco, because NOSTR is not a platform. NOSTR is like I said in the beginning. NOSTR is what we call a protocol or a system.
A protocol.
And a protocol is, in the general sense, a protocol is just a set of rules that is used by different nodes or parts of a system in order to communicate. An example of a protocol would be English, where we are interfacing with each other using the protocol called English. And on top of that, there are also a lot of implicit protocols in terms of like human communication. You might be nodding, right, in order to confirm that you're listening or that you're understanding what I'm saying. That's a very human protocol that's not documented anywhere, but it is like a set of rules in order for us to facilitate communication. Now, computers, when it comes to computers are very stupid. They're dumb machines, and they need very explicit rules. So that's how they work in the computer realm and create networks. And the protocol or the language that is spoken with NOSTR allows for these things that I described. So they allow for you to do a publication. They allow for you to create networks. And then the question becomes is like, for whom is this protocol? Well, for whom is the capability in order to create publications and create social networks? That is for everybody. The reason for its existence is because you could say it's like, well, we're already doing that, which is true. We are already doing that, but we're also experiencing a lot of problems with the way that we are doing it. And a lot of the reasons that we are experiencing problems is structural in nature. So this goes back to this point of where I described that NOSTR facilitates both censorship resistance and network effect. And this is probably a good point where I'm going to go related to how things work right now.
Okay.
So how things work right now is that we use these platforms, and generally there are only a handful of platforms that dominate the space. We have the company Meta, which is a company, but it has a couple of platforms, which is Instagram and Facebook. Maybe we can throw in WhatsApp in there. We have Twitter or X, and that's basically. And maybe there are other parts like Reddit is also a platform,
Yeah,
for one of the larger platforms. And what happens is that, or YouTube also good, very good example. What happened is that these platforms, they're one single server, let's say, and we're all using that. It facilitates a whole bunch of things. But what happened is that they captured this so-called network effect. And network effect boils down to this notion that everybody is there because everybody's there. Technically speaking, it means that the value of a system or value of a network grows exponentially with the increase of participants or nodes in the system. So you can imagine that if we have telephones, if there's only one telephone in the world, it's absolutely useless. If there are two telephones in the world, that's nice because now two people can at least call each other. But you can imagine if more and more telephone connections start to appear in the world, the value of the telephone network as such starts to grow up to a point where actually you can actually assume it to be there, and we can start to integrate it into other systems in our society up to the point where we're now, where every form that you're going to fill in anywhere in any context, there is this probably required space that you have to fill in for your telephone number. So there's this assumption there that people have a telephone number. And that's the result of network effect, because everybody is using a telephone because everybody's using a telephone. And the same happened with these platforms, let's say, for instance, Facebook or X or YouTube. And that's nice, right? There's a lot of value. There is value there in the fact that we found something that we all congregated and have this network effect. So this network effect, it by itself contains a lot of value, but it's stuck in that platform. So this also means that because it's a centralized platform and there are moderation policies that apply there, you run a censorship risk. So the YouTube is in the spot in order to just delete your account. Twitter can just, or X can just delete your account. Facebook can just delete your account. And you are censorship resistant in the sense that you are on the internet, so you can go to an alternative. So if you're banned from YouTube, you can go to Rumble or Odyssey or whatever other platform that's there, or you can host your own website and put your videos up there. So technically you are censorship resistant. The problem is that the moment you do that, or you're forced to do that, you're self-marginalizing. You no longer have access to the network effect that's there on YouTube, because everybody's on YouTube. Nobody's on your little website. Your videos might be out there, but your audience isn't. So this is where the fundamental the problem is that NOSTR tries to solve. So for whom is NOSTR? For NOSTR is for content creators that don't want to run this censorship risk, which is a real business risk for them to get their account removed. NOSTR is for businesses that maybe have an Instagram account for marketing purposes that don't get their account removed just because the moderation bot had some glitch and just for no apparent reason deleted their account, even though they're only posting puppy pictures. And that business has now needs to try to contact customer service of Instagram, which is probably 5 people that has to service millions and millions and millions of people, never going to pick up the phone, right? These are real risks, and they're not just risk from a political perspective, because it's also always like the first thing that we think about when we're talking about censorship. It's like, oh, this is about politics, but that's not just the case, right? It doesn't have to be politics. It goes from all the way from politics to just error, a platform error, or maybe it could be not just moderation error, but maybe there is something going wrong on the service and the website's just down. Most of the time, these websites are online, but some of the times they're actually offline. And this is also a risk. Now all those people that are on there, they suffer from the fact that website is down. So there's a whole spectrum of reasons as to what this censorship risk can occur and what it actually entails. And that's both for content creators as well as the audience, because the content creator now has to move somewhere else and lost its audience. But at the same token, the audience lost the content creator that they were following. So NOSTR is for everybody, ultimately. It's just a different paradigm in how we construct the web. So we're just rebuilding the web from the ground up in a different structural manner in a more sensible way, ultimately.
Okay, so NOSTR is for everybody.
Yes.
And a claim that made in the NOSTR website is that when the network effect is not tied to a single organization group, users cannot harm each other, basically. Okay, so almost every now big social network started with a similar value proposition in mind, or at least not to censor people later. But as we already spoke, they get infiltrated by bad actors or people with bad intents, just individuals or state propaganda and all these things. How do we know that me, as the average skeptic, that NOSTR will not be subject to algorithmic changes later, that something similar might just happen?
Because because it's a language. So there's no
Mhm.
organization, there's no business,
I see.
there's nothing behind NOSTR. It's just a set of rules. It's just a standard that some guy
Right.
posted out
Protocol.
there
Yeah.
online. It's a protocol, and
Yeah.
people are free to adopt that protocol. And a whole bunch of developers started working on that protocol and start creating things. But there's nothing as such that owns NOSTR. There's just relay operators. There are people that own servers, or there are users that control profiles, and that's the ecosystem. And so it's not one coherent thing as such. It's the only thing that is coherent between all of it is that they're using the same protocol.
Hmm. Okay, I see. I see. I see. I see. But in a way, okay, so the reason I'm kind of going into this thinking is so one of the big donors of Nostr I saw online is Jack Dorsey.
Hmm.
Is that right? So the founder of Twitter, who for years, something that he did, for example, was that he lied about the amount of users in the platform. Most of them were bots. He lied about, oh, the US government is not demanding things, etc., although they were actively silencing points of view. Now, from a PR point of view, Jack Dorsey um, has maybe this bad reputation on his name, and him as an investor in Nostr might, in a way, not stigmatize, like stain of public opinion of what Nostr might be. And maybe they're afraid of like, oh, here goes the guy who ruined Twitter, or who
Hmm.
invented this thing, and maybe there is again bad. Although you just mentioned that is a language, is a protocol, so it cannot be manipulated in this way, but there might be something we don't really understand in terms of code, or in terms of how relays are run and organized, that, there could be something harmful behind it, something malign, let's say. Does that make sense?
Sure. So let's go into that. So
Yeah.
um, let's set the topic of Jack Dorsey or the nature of Jack Dorsey himself aside. So let's just assume or agree that Jack Dorsey is Satan. Right. So
Yeah.
we have Satan. Jack Dorsey is the ultimate evil. Um, that makes it a lot easier for the discussion.
Okay.
So what it actually is that he did is he gave the money to an organization which is a charity organization that subsequently gives the money to free and open source developers. So it's not a direct. So at least Satan ensured that there is no direct funding. It's like indirect funding. He has no control over. So he has no control over what actually happens with the money. The charity organization is in control of what happens with the money, and even that
Hmm.
charity organization is not really in control of what happens with the money. They just decide what individual open source developers they give the money, but then subsequently those open source developers are not actually tied to perform any particular thing. So of course they propose projects that they're doing, but they just get the money, and then there's this trust involved where we trust that you'll actually start doing it, what it is that you're doing. So from that perspective, I'm not particularly worried that Satan is putting money into Nostr. It's like also not an investment, right? There is no return on investment on this here. It's just Satan threw away the money. There is no expectation of any money
Right.
coming back.
So it's like good faith. So like good
yes,
faith, hopefully something nice is going to come out of
yes,
this,
correct.
as promised. Okay.
Yes. Um, so that S2, let's go into the Dorsey topic a little bit itself. I'm not particularly aware of Dorsey. I also don't know him. And I never use Twitter, so there's also that. Um,
Lucky
um,
you.
but the sense that I do get, and the stories that I've heard from Dorsey also in relation to Nostr, is that when Twitter started out, it was sort of the idea or the sentiment was sort of similar in relation to what Nostr is, right? It's this open
Hmm.
system. The problem was that from a technical perspective, it wasn't necessarily an open system. It was just one server, and that server was open, so other people could connect to that server. The problem is that when you do that, you still incur the cost of facilitating all those connections. So the moment, and early on, that's fine. But when you grow really, really big, now those costs are going to keep growing. And what happened is that at some point, Twitter became a public company. So now you have these shareholders that you have to take into account, and they want to get return on investment. So that's where a lot of this started, right? So it's because the pressure to generate return on investment and try to monetize this system called Twitter is where a lot of the corruption, let's say, started to creep in from all kinds of directions. I think in general, apart from, and this was something that at least Dorsey says he lamented a lot when he saw that occurring. And that's the reason why he started to look for an alternative. He identified that the solution would be a protocol instead of using these platforms. So he wanted to see if there was a protocol that Twitter could subsequently adopt. In order to do that, he started this working group called Blue Sky. So this was a working group with the mission is like, okay, either identify an existing protocol in the wild, or if you cannot find it, if you cannot find one that is adequate, build one yourself, such that we have a protocol that then subsequently Twitter can use. And not much later, Elon Musk took over Twitter, and this working group, they started to get nervous because they thought like, well, the future of our project is then subsequently in the hands of Elon Musk, and it's probably not in the interest of Elon Musk to go this route. So we need to become independent. That they did. So that's what the Blue Sky organization became. They created the Blue Sky protocol, the AT protocol, and that's ultimately what became Blue Sky. And not much later, Jack Dorsey, that initiated this Blue Sky thing and funded it partly, he asked on Twitter, is like, okay, does anyone know of like another protocol or project that's going on? And he was made aware of NOSTR, and not long after being made aware of NOSTR, he switched sides. So he publicly removed his Blue Sky account and started funding NOSTR. So that's basically what happened there. So he lost faith in Blue Sky because he basically saw a lot of the same dynamics going on.
Yeah, just from the other side. Yeah.
Yeah, with the fact that they got funding, they centralized a lot of the development. There is a need to make money and get return on investment on the stuff that they're doing. That puts a lot of the pressures on the developing of this stuff. That will ultimately, at least that's his hypothesis, that will lead to bad decisions along the way because of these pressures that are going on. And this is something that we actually see. Like I would immediately state that I'm not a Blue Sky expert, but we recently, I think a couple months ago, 2 months ago, there was somebody that was really active in the Blue Sky space, and he was basically kicked out, which is interesting by itself. It's like, okay, it's supposed to be like, at least the censorship resistance thing was sort of there in the Blue Sky, but he still got basically booted out of the network. And a bit disgruntled, he later admitted in a conversation that I had with him that indeed this dynamic occurred where the wrong decisions were made and the wrong dynamic is at play. And this is something that we saw in advance, and we were not, and therefore we're not interested in Blue Sky. And this was something that he was hopeful for that wasn't going to occur, but it did occur. And he had to admit later on. But this is something that happened to Twitter. This is something that happens to all these platforms, regardless of their intent. And this is something that was very consciously in the back of the mind of the creator of NOSTR when he designed the protocol.
Okay, so as you were mentioning this last sentence of yours, I also thought of the biggest disruptor maybe of the century, OpenAI, or at least in one way, one of the biggest, which owns ChatGPT, who also went from being open source to closed source and then attract private investors and then, money and opportunities and other thing, pressure behind the scenes, force you to have political biases in anything you do in your decision making. So from what you said right now, is it right for me to assume that NOSTR will never or cannot become closed source? Will it always be open source, or can something become like OpenAI?
Yeah. So the what you're describing is absolutely possible. Okay. And A good example of this is actually the web standard that we have and browsers. So we have Chrome, and Chrome is the browser software made by Google. And technically, Chrome is open source, and technically, the web is an open standard. But because Chrome has, I don't know what the market share is, but it's overwhelming. It has overwhelming market share, and there's like 2.5 competing implementations of the web standard in browser. So there's the Firefox and maybe some other that are very marginal. It doesn't matter that the standard is open. The moment you have one dominant player, that dominant player just determines what the standard is de facto. Because when they change the standard, that change in standard now applies to, let's say, 90% of the space. So now the resulting 10% is forced to go along, because otherwise they're going to self-marginalize by not going with the adjusted standard. So that's not an open standard, right? That's just the dictates of a central party. So this dynamic definitely exists and technically is possible, and is even possible with NOSTR. So in a sense, we're running against the clock here. What it is that we're trying to do is that we try to bootstrap enough network effect among enough among enough participants to get like enough diversified ecosystem of players and participants, that whenever it is that a big player comes in, it is the big player that is forced to maintain interoperability with the rest of the ecosystem, such that we don't get this dynamic going on. Because it's always a battle between who needs to be interoperable with whom. So we have an open standard. We have a whole bunch of participants that join that open standard. So now everybody is happy and interoperable with each other. And every new player that comes in is therefore forced to also adopt the standard in order to be interoperable with the rest of the ecosystem. So what is the value of the ecosystem in relation to what is the value of this big central player in relation to that ecosystem? And can it start to dictate what the standard ought to be? And can it make breaking changes in order to break interoperability?
Does that essentially mean that there is no free internet? Because if someone has a monopoly over it and they dictate the standard, and if you don't align with that standard, you are useless. What are you going to do with 1% of the market? In a way, there is like indirectly no free internet.
Well, I mean, so this is by already the thing that I described in relation to network effect and censorship resistance. I mean, the internet is an open system, and you are censorship resistant, and you can create your own marginal thing. That will always be true, but there's this practical reality of where is the network effect. And yes, from a platform perspective, that is the case. From a web browser perspective, that is the case. But there are a lot of aspects. I mean, even ICANN, which is, it's funny that the web, we have this decentralized system in the internet, but it's all, the way that we use it is the web. And I mean like websites, right? So the URLs, the google.com or the facebook.com or the instagram.com, those names, they are all inside a central registry, and that registry is controlled by a central party, and that central party is called ICANN. It's this organization that is in charge of keeping track of these names. And this used to be, I think, at the start, it used to be like one guy. At the start of the web, it was just one guy that said, okay, I'll do this, right? And then eventually it's like, okay, maybe this becomes a little bit too much of a responsibility for one guy. So it became this organization that was based in the United States. And I think, but I'm not clear on the history. I think now it's like either with the UN or some other, somehow it internationalized or whatever it is. The whole point of it is that ultimately it's still one organization that is in control over all these names that we use of google.com. And the fact that if you type in google.com, you go to Google. It's they that ensure that this is you go to the right network or the right server. They supposedly are neutral, or they're supposed to be neutral. But the moment something becomes so big and everybody starts to rely on it, it becomes so inherently political because there's so much power there that ultimately this stuff will cave to the pressure. That's just an iron law, and it already did. And I mean, you can have whatever opinion on that occurrence of what you want. I mean, in the first instance, I think was like some Nazi website. It's like you can have whatever opinion about the Nazi website, and maybe you think it's a good thing that the Nazi website was banned on this, like the fundamental level on the web, because their name was scrubbed of the central record. But it like in any sense, the thing itself lost neutrality that day.
Yeah.
And then the question becomes, is like, okay, where is this going to go? Where is this going to stop? I think recently the same thing happened with a website. It's unfortunate I forgot the name of the website. And this website was a repository for pirated material, but the pirated material was also like books, academic papers, journals, all that type of stuff. So there was this large repository of pirated material, and it got kicked off this central registry as well. So yes, the internet, that in the way that we're interfacing it from day to day, is already dominated by this centralizing dynamic of both on the. So it already was on the fact that we use these websites, we use the web that is controlled by a central party. We use browsers that is already dominated by a monopoly of Chrome, and we are using platform, and you subsequently use the web and those browsers to go to platforms, which are also these monopolistic entities that have the same type of dominance. So yes, this is the reality of the internet today.
So complicated. It's so complicated. And then since it's global, you have all these nuance of according to whose morals and values and incentives are you banning X platform, or are you totally removing someone from the whole system? And then it's so much to dive to. But I want to move slightly off the censorship part, and I'm just curious. And again, forget me if these questions sound ignorant to you, but my understanding of protocol, language, and all these things is zero to none. So it's interesting to me how NOSTR is not only trying to become one thing, such as social media platform, but also is a decentralized Wikipedia, marketplace, and so many other things which I saw listed in the website. Don't you think that by trying to catch too many rabbits, maybe you'll catch none? Because it's okay for a platform to be multi-purpose, of course, but the ones that have proven to be successful have started as a single-purpose use, then had i.e. social media platforms, and then expanded to other uses after mass adoption. Wouldn't it accelerate the growth of NOSTR if the teams behind it or the people as an open source focus on making it the next big thing in one domain?
So it's interesting that you asked that, because I guess the central thesis as to why NOSTR would be a success is the exact opposite. Let me explain.
Yeah.
So because NOSTR itself is this protocol, right, that allows for all these different things. It just allows you to do the same things we already do on the web, and we do a whole bunch of different things on the web. I discussed this notion of network effect, and the network effect that is inside these silos is also very much oriented, as you explained, in relation to a particular vertical. So YouTube does videos, so it captured the network effect of videos. Twitter does the tweets, the short publications, and then we have Substack that's rather new, and that does articles or long form, etc., etc., etc. The thing is because these are all separate silos, there is no network effect among them. So it's actually a terrible experience, is that content creators have to create like 10 different accounts. When they upload their video, they have to go to YouTube. Then they have to log into their Twitter account in order to advertise that, look, this is the video that I uploaded on YouTube. Then they have to go to Instagram to post a nice fancy picture in order to advertise that they just did the interview, etc., etc. So they have all these different accounts and all these different platforms. Then what they start to do, they go to another platform called Linktree, where they can list all these different accounts that they actually have. This is exactly the part where NOSTR comes in, because you don't have an account. The whole point of these centralized platforms is that they facilitate a whole bunch of things. Among the things that they facilitate is your identity. So you have an account. You are on the register of that particular platform is your name, and that also gives that's also where their ability to remove your name comes from. Whereas with NOSTR, you just create your persona and you publish your publications as that persona with a digital signature, and I can follow your digital persona and then interface with whatever publication it is that you made. So whether that is your articles, whether that is your tweets, whether that is your videos, depending on the app that I'm using, I can just see that stuff. And maybe I'm using an app that can show me and your tweets and your articles and your videos. Maybe I'm using an app that only shows your videos or only shows your tweets or only shows your articles. The thing is, I as a user, I'm not tied to any particular app. Like, you can only use the Twitter app if you want, or you can only use the X app if you want to use X. Whereas with NOSTR, you can use whatever app that you want. The thing is that I'm just, the app is not a service. The app is a tool, and that tool that speaks this NOSTR the protocol language, and I can use it to interface with the people that I follow, which is you. And if that app is dedicated to videos, I see videos. If that app is dedicated to tweets, I see tweets.
Okay, now I'm starting to get it. Okay, but in that case, and sorry to interrupt you.
No problem.
Doesn't this incentivize? Well, doesn't this makes you very scared to the competition, to the big boys? Why would they allow you to enter this space where you're gonna take away so much of the viewership or the attention?
Well, I'm not asking permission, Francesco. I'm not going to ask permission for nothing. That's the whole point.
Obviously, you're not going to ask permission for it, but wouldn't they be to the benefit to work against you? Can they stop you in a way? Does it make sense? Like, can they?
That's funny because the
lobby or make money or do something to stop this process that you're making? Because what you are proposing here is very scary to all these big players, I would assume. Maybe I'm not sure.
So yes, I know. So it's funny that you mention it because very, very early on, and this was very weird. It was very strange when Elon Musk took over Twitter. He banned putting links to other platforms or systems in your bio. And one of the things that he banned was like putting your NOSTR identity in your bio. And this was years ago, and NOSTR barely was a thing. So this was very, very weird. It's like apparently Elon Musk thought we were so important, but it was just a bunch of nerds trying to hack away.
Right.
So that's very funny. It kind of ties back into this idea that I described earlier, where you have like the value of the interoperability of an ecosystem and the value of a particular big player. At some point, it's like the interest starts to shift, right? Because the point of NOSTR and what I just described earlier was that it's this horizontal network effect. So it's not the network effect of a particular vertical, videos. No, it's the network effect among all these different use cases, be that video or articles or tweets or recipes or taxis or whatever, all the things that we're doing on the web, and like the horizontal interconnections between all those things. Like if Twitter itself, it can still be a thing. It can still be a platform. It can still have paid users. It can still give you perks. It's just that, okay, if I'm not forced to use the X app anymore, but I can still interface with what happens on that platform using other apps, I'm still might be incentivized to pay for the perks that platform give me. So maybe it's even better right now because they're so monopolistic. Of course, they're going to defend their position. But if you're not like in a monopoly position, but you're just a big player, let's say, then the things shift a little bit in the sense that, okay, you don't have to. The interoperability becomes nice because let's say you have 40% market share. You're a big player, you have 40% market share.
Okay.
40% of the users are using your app. But because of the interoperability, you don't have to convince the other 60% of the market share to download your app and using it in order to use the content that is hosted on your platform and pay for whatever service it is that you're providing. The other 60% of the market share can still do that from the app that they are using. So it's actually...
Wouldn't that take away all the data that they need as X?
Sure.
They have user data of statistics of how many times they're watching, when, from there, which actually benefits to them to them running the system and advertising money. So that will be the losing access. What is the most valuable thing right now is data. So they're losing access to their data because now it's open source, or everywhere around, unknown source. Where is it coming from? From somewhere in the protocol. So that's why they would. One reason I would assume from my ignorant mind, yeah.
And there are two parts to this. So on the one hand, a lot of the data becomes public.
Yeah.
So they don't have control over the data anymore. Any market participant can start to analyze the network as such, and start to compete in this data analysis game, which is very nice, because then those market participants can start to create algorithms and suggestion algorithms or search algorithms or whatever it is, and then we're no longer stuck with one particular algo. There's this marketplace of competing algorithms, and you can pick and choose whatever it is that you prefer. And the other part is that a lot of the data that is harvested comes from an application level. So the fact that you're using an app, and the app is harvesting all this data, and you have to give permissions that it scrapes your entire phone, and all this stuff. Well, okay, Francesco, if you have the option, right now, you don't have the option. If you want to be at the platform where everybody is, which is X, you're gonna have to download the X app. Okay. But now we're in this NOSTR world, and you have the option. We have app A that will scrape your entire phone, and you will have to sign off the soul of your firstborn child in order to use the thing. Or we have app B that doesn't do all that stuff. Which app is it that you're going to use?
Personally, I'm using app B if it's guaranteed. What you're saying is true. Yeah.
Okay, so why is it that we're actually, the only reason that they're able to harvest all this stuff is because we're kept hostage by this network effect?
Couldn't they stop you from accessing via NOSTR somehow? Couldn't they make it to only be X to be accessible only via X and not through any other
that's sure. That's the case right now, right? So I'm talking about anything that it would have to speak the NOSTR protocol. It would have to adopt the protocol.
Right.
Yes, sure.
Right. Okay, so NOSTR is operating with a value-to-value system rather than a traditional advertisement model, I read. Is that correct?
It's NOSTR is an open system, so you can do whatever. But one of the things that is being tested right now and implemented is indeed this notion of value for value. Correct.
Okay, so can you explain value-to-value system and what it means exactly to someone who never heard of it, and how can it benefit to the creator economy? What can it add that it doesn't already have? Why would people be interested in such a thing?
Okay, so the notion of value for value is that you put something out there on the web, which may or may not contain value, but the value is always relative to the audience that is consuming the content. So what that value is in terms of a number or in effort is always in the eye of the beholder of the audience. And the value that can be exchanged can be in like three forms. It can be in time, talent, or treasure, which are the things. So what you can do, you have like a content creator, and that content creator maybe has a website or a thing. There's a lot of stuff that goes around being a content creator, and people can decide, it's like, okay, I like this stuff, I'm going to help them out, so I'm going to put in time, I'm going to donate my time in order to help out this content creator in whatever way that is giving value back for the value that you receive from the content. If you have a particular talent, you can leverage that talent. So maybe now in the age of AI imagery and art, the talent of being an illustrator is maybe a little bit diluted. But let's say you're a very good illustrator, or you're a good editor, or whatever it is, and you're saying, like, I'm just going to donate my talent to this content creator to create very nice shorts or a little edits of the content that it is. So that's a way of giving value back. And then the last part is like treasure. It's like cold hard cash, right? It's just sending money back. And how much money it is that you're going to send, or if you're even going to send money, that's just for your own perspective. If you've listened to some self-help, a podcast or whatever it is, just as an example, and it really pulled you out of a dark period, and you've managed to become a millionaire in 5 years. Then maybe after those 5 years, and you're looking back and you're a millionaire, you're like, well, maybe that particular podcast that really helped me, that gave me a lot of value, so I'm just going to give it $100,000 worth of money, because that was the value that it gave to me, right? So this is the basic general concept behind value for value, and it's something that was pioneered by Adam Curry and John C. Dvorak in the No Agenda podcast, which is one of the earliest podcasts. It's still running, I think, for 18 years or something.
Oh, wow.
And this is the model that they apply. They like there's proof that it can work. At least for them, it works. And there are a lot of other content creators that actually also were somewhat successful using this model.
Do you think this is going to become the standard, or is it just something they're playing around?
No, I don't know. I don't know how it relates to all the other models, be it the ad model or whatever it is. It's just that, to transition from a technical perspective, what happened is that in order to facilitate this direct value transfer from a money perspective, is that, like, NOSTR has really good Bitcoin integration, and this is because the guy that invented NOSTR, he was a Bitcoin developer. So of course his buddies are also going to be Bitcoin developers, and so the first people that started to work on NOSTR were Bitcoin developers, and then obviously the first community or people that start to use NOSTR are going to be a whole bunch of Bitcoiners.
Yeah.
So that's where so we early on we had a very tight integration of Bitcoin payments. So those are so well integrated, I can just send cents amounts of Bitcoin to anybody, and I do that on a pretty regular basis. So if I post something and I get a pretty good comment where it's like, okay, this comment actually has value to me, I send a little bit of Bitcoin to that person, so maybe 10 cents worth or whatever it is, for a couple of reasons. So one, it's for signal reasons, in order to show the other people, show the outside world that this thing actually has value. Because you can give a like, but a like is cheap, right? You can write a comment saying thank you. That's also a pretty good signal as to the outside world that maybe something has value. But just the fact that it got a little bit of Bitcoin is also a signal to the outside world that this thing that actually that it's that there's signal in relation to all the noise or spam that goes around. And the other part is that it incentivizes the relationship. So it's like, if I post things and the people that post useful things reply useful things to me, if I reward them with like little bits of money, it cements the relationships where it's like more likely that they're going to do the same thing over and over and over again, right?
That sounds beautiful in a close, tight community of like-minded people, such as the people who are now using NOSTR, Bitcoin developers and Bitcoiners and all these things. But from a mass adoption point of view, you are relying on the charity of strangers, especially as you get. Okay, so imagine a big content creator such as Mr. Beast, or someone who makes a lot of money from the traditional model of advertisement, and now relies on people's charity, who most of the people are watching. They don't pay £4 for YouTube Premium, and they watch 15 ads in a 10-minute video because they are, whatever, call them freeloaders. Nothing wrong with it, by the way. So, but yet they get eyeballs on the ads, and the ads pays Mr. Beast millions of dollars. It's a system that works, whatever its flows. Why would those creators be incentivized to go in a platform that doesn't do that and rely, especially for entertainment? Let's consider NOSTR mainly as a social media / social network, mainly is going to become the use. Why would I, as a creator, as a podcaster, go there, especially if I do entertainment? Because most people in entertainment don't donate money. It's not this close community of
Sure, but that's why I mentioned is like it's an open platform, so you can do whatever. You can do an ad-based model. It's going to be a little bit more difficult in order to force users to watch ads that are like force injected into the thing,
because you don't own the app. Okay,
right? But you can still do brand deals. I mean, Mr. B, I'm sure Mr. Beast gets most of his money from the fact that he has
from brand deals,
from brand deals and partnerships and whatever it is, and not necessarily the ad money from YouTube. I'm always surprised that people watch ads on YouTube. I mean, you called those the freeloaders. Those are not the freeloaders, Francesco. I'm the
Who are
freeloader.
they?
I don't watch a single ad on YouTube.
I'm sure I know what you do. I used to do it as well.
So, and like I said, it's like there are a large variety of monetization models in the world, and all can be applied, and let everybody try whatever it is that they want to try and see what succeeds, and see what's sensible in what context or in what situation. I'm not particularly worried about that. It's just what I explain is that we already have a very good payment integration with NOSTR with Bitcoin already.
Yeah.
But like I said, it's an open system, so you could just as well integrate credit card systems if you so want. The only difference is that then you're going to have to ask permission. The nice thing about all this stuff is like nobody has to ask permission about using NOSTR, and nobody had to ask permission about implementing Bitcoin. And the only person that's going to complain are the
established
the app stores. No, the app stores. So the Apple App Store is going to complain, and maybe the Google App Store is going to complain at some point. And in Apple, it's a little bit difficult because the Apple is like a jail. So if the jailer says no, then it's going to be very difficult to do something else. Within the Android space, it's a little bit more open. But even there, Google has now announced that they're going to close down Android and the App Store to software developers that are KYC'd only. So you cannot be an anonymous software developer publishing an app anymore. You're going to have to show your passport to Google before you can even publish your app.
Right.
Which is also like a whole part. We may or may not get into this conversation at some point, but just to address it shortly. It is not. There is a reason that Google does this. It's not completely unsensible to say, okay, we want some sort of accountability as to the app developer publishing an app. The answer that we have within NOSTR is what we call Web of Trust. So there we have a NOSTR app store. It exists, but there the apps is just another publication, as a tweet is a publication, a video is a publication, an article publication, an app is a publication. So that publicized app is tied to this online persona or identity that somebody created at some point, and that might be under a real name. It might also be Dragon Slayer 999. And so Dragon Slayer 999 published an app. That's fine, but Dragon Slayer 999 might have a really good reputation, right? Because he has really good articles and really good tweets, and he has a lot of interaction, and people trust Dragon Slayer 999. So the moment Dragon Slayer 999 publishes an app, we know who Dragon Slayer 9 is, and he has this reputation and accountability from that perspective. So we are able to tackle this this notion of social reputation from a decentralized, what we call Web of Trust mechanic, where I know this person, that person knows that other person, so I know that other person by proxy of knowing that other person, etc. And with 6 degrees of separations, we know each other. We all know each other in the entire world. We're able to tackle this as well. So okay, it's very, very sad if Google starts to shut things down in this manner. Hopefully things stay open enough that I can just start using my NOSTR app store and stay free and don't have to ask permission, etc. Because the permissionlessness is a large part of this conversation.
So what you were saying now, so let's take on the first stages of adoption of NOSTR, where this trust has not yet been assumed between us, so we are more equals and we can be anonymous dragon slayers, and it has so much power to the individual because we don't have to ask for permission, and we can create whatever and everything goes. Doesn't that make the network or protocol very subject to a lot of scamming and people trying to, just have very bad faith on scamming, stealing, and manipulation and all those things? Is there any sort of how do you think people could protect themselves so as that, since there's no central authority to moderate all these things?
Right.
How does the average person goes around this?
Right.
Does it make sense? Or at least on the early stages.
Yes. Yeah. So it does make sense, but it doesn't. It's exactly not in the early stages where this is a problem. Because in the early stages, there is no incentive for scammers or spammers or whatever to attack the network.
Early stages of mass adoption, I would say. Like
right. Okay. Yeah. So in the early stages of mass adoption, that's where indeed that's where this starts to become a thing. So we're actively building the shield or the ways of mitigating this type of stuff in what I described as this web of trust. So these are the social relationships that we build over time with other users in order to build reputation. And there are a couple different ways of approaching this, and those different ways of approaching that problem are now actively being developed in a semi-coordinated effort right now at this particular moment. So we have like a 9-month hackathon type thing that people set up that all try to tackle this issue. But in general, it's this notion that you get this subjective view of the network where instead of some central party saying that somebody can trust it or not trust it, you're able to generate a subjective view of the network in relation to, okay, who's my network? What does my network, what is the network of the people in my network, etc. And how does this other person that I'm having in front of me right now relate to how I see the world around me? How does that result in a score or a judgment as to what their position is? And that can be done by myself. That can also be done by a third-party service provider. So it's just a service that I pay for that puts in a lot of effort in order to make these calculations for me. That's basically the route that we're taking, because that's the only route that we are able to take in order to solve this problem. Because we have to have an answer to online digital identities coming from the state, as well as these centralized social credit scores that are undoubtedly going to be attached to them at some point. And this is our permissionless, decentralized answer to them. The ability to generate an identity from the go without asking any permission, and then subsequently starting to relate with other people without asking any permission, and then starting to make subjective value observations in relation to the reputation or value of the people around us without any permission. Does that make sense, Francesco?
About half of it.
Okay.
But I don't know if you could maybe oversimplify it, because I still didn't understand how that could not be somehow manipulated with extreme fake accounts or bots that raise the trust of one person and create like fake subjective bubbles of trust, if that makes sense.
Yes.
I'm not sure if
No, so there are two answers to that. So the first part of the answer is you're absolutely right. From a fundamental perspective, what it is that you're doing, you're creating a game. It's like what we like in computer science or in game theory or whatever it is. You call a game. These are these metrics that you judge things or play by. It's a fundamental truth that any game can be gamed. So you're right? So if the rules of the game are known, then some party can just observe what the rules of the game are and start to figure out, it's like, how can we game the rules of this game in order to break the game? Because there is no perfect game, so every game can be broken. So that's fundamentally true. That said, the nice thing about this approach is that there is a couple things going on. So there is not a single game being played. With the and I can relate this to the algorithm on, like, for example, Facebook or TikTok or whatever. The game there is a black box. Nobody knows the rules of the game, but it is a single game. So what the people are doing is that they're interacting with the game in order to figure out they're trying to reverse engineer what the rules of the game actually are in order to figure out what the protocol or what the algorithm does, and then start to manipulate the algorithm. And they can do that because they have a single target, which is the TikTok algorithm. Within this NOSTR context, there is no one algorithm. So there can be a whole vast suite of different types of algorithms or games that I can choose and pick from, or I can use them at the same time in parallel. I can use them because they're subjective I can generate them with knowledge that only I have, but an outsider doesn't necessarily have. So it's also partly a black box what is going on. So it's not a single target anymore. There are like multiple targets, and that's complicated with that the implementation of that game is also different for each of the individual participant in that game. So now you have like, let's say we have 10 different games, but we also have 8 billion different iterations of the 10 billion games that are being played that have to be analyzed and gamed. So that's one part that makes it a little bit more difficult. But let's say that's only complexity, and if you're dedicated enough, you can still game every game.
Let's say you have a supercomputer or some.
Right.
Yeah.
Then the next part is that, okay, I'm always able to retreat. So there's this scale going on in here. If I am, it's always in relation to how open do I want to be. And the more open I am, the more exposed I am to things that I was not previously aware of, or people that I didn't previously know. So if I want to be so open that I'm potentially exposed to every interesting voice out there in the world, I'm increasing my risk of being introduced to noise or spam or scammers or whatever it is. If I want to reduce the risk of being exposed to those scammers or spam or noise, I just reduce my openness all the way to the point where I'm only interacting with the people that I physically verified. If we meet each other physically, we shake our hands, we exchange keys right then and there. There is no spammer. There can be a trillion spammers. I don't care. They're never going to get in between the fact that we shook our hands and we exchanged keys, and I decided to only look at the people that I've shook hands with. So I'm just ignoring all the spammers. Those spammers only become relevant the moment I start to become more and more open, and then I'm leveraging more and more complex games, right? Because just interfacing with the people that I already trusted is a very simple game that can barely be gamed. But the more I start to become more open, I start to play more complex games. And then the risk of this stuff going on starts to also increase. But whenever I notice, it's like, okay, I'm open to this particular degree, and all of a sudden I'm starting to experience a lot of noise, I can just retreat to a lower level of openness, and then the noise subsides. Okay, at that moment, I'm now less open. I'm less exposed to potentially interesting things, that potential signal that is out there somewhere, but I'm able to, from that retreated position, I'm able to start to reestablish and move forward, maybe in a way that I'm starting to play a different game. It's like, okay, I'm going to retreat back, and I need a different game in order to approach openness again. Do I make sense, Francesco?
Yeah, it makes sense. It seems to me that NOSTR is going to be very good for small, neat private communities. Like, imagine a Patreon that is decentralized, and for like, if you want to support specially, because I always think of it from the lens of a content creator as myself. I'm sure there's myriads of applications out there, but I can only see what I know. So it does seem like it's going to be very good or high trust when it comes to smaller, neat communities where the game is more simple. And the rules are, as you just said, not so complex.
But this at the same time, because you have these small knit communities, that becomes the foundation of these higher levels. So it's very difficult for this bot swarm to infiltrate these lower tight knit communities. Whereas subsequently, these lower tight knit communities already have like a lot of interconnectedness to them, right? I'm not part of one community; I'm part of a bunch of communities. So it's going to be very hard for those botnets to actually attack the low levels, and then you can start to build up from there. And then, sure, I mean, the higher you go, the more vulnerable you become to these botnets.
Yeah.
But the question is, it's like, okay, how high do you actually need to go, right? I mean, if this notion of 6 degrees of separation connects you to the entire world, 3 degrees of separation connects you to already a whole bunch of people. You only need those last degrees of separation in order to connect with like the last margins of people, right? Somewhere in Siberia or in the Arctic Pole or in the deep jungle or whatever. It's like for those people, I need those 6 degrees of separations. But if I just apply 3, I already cover, I don't know what percentage of the population it is, but it's already a large percentage. And that's a very hard factor already. I mean, 3 degrees of separation. Maybe there is some room in like the third step, right? to start attacking. But in the first step, there's barely any room. In the second, there's also not a lot of room. It's only like the friend of a friend of a friend that last part, maybe that's where some of the fuckery starts to occur.
And you don't really need to go that wide or spread. Okay, so NOSTR is open source, decentralized. However, it works with relays that hold information. And information, at least nowadays, requires a lot of bandwidth, storage, moderation, and uptime, which are costly. These cost a lot of money. Where is NOST going to find the money to maintain its infrastructure in the event of a mass adoption? Is it just going to rely on charities such as Jack Dorsey? Because we're talking about a lot of money.
That depends. So there is no one answer as to what the incentive or funding model will be for all these servers, because that's also the case already for the internet as such. There are a lot of different reasons why particular servers are running. So there are a whole bunch of servers on the internet that are not directly paid for, but are like part of a business model where it's just part of the infrastructure of running a business, where the actual business might be selling soap. People are selling soap, but part of the business operation of selling soap is that they're also running a server for their customers. So maybe soap doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but maybe you catch my drift here.
Yeah, it's okay.
Then there are also a bunch of websites that are run like, you could call it charity, or just the fact that it's people's hobby or their community. And you said that it costs a lot of money. Like hosting a server for like 1,000 people is just it's trivially cheap. There are no real material. There are not real that many or much material cost involved with that. Like any $10 a month virtual private server will cover like many thousands of users.
But over time, is the protocol not going to keep that information data from like users over time? Like let's say if NOSTR starts running for a decade plus, is it not going to have like archives of just data of those people?
I see.
So like you need like a lot of data storage, for example.
So this is a nice thing. NOSTR doesn't give you any data guarantees at all. It makes no promises. So
connects to my next question, but please go. Yeah.
This means that there are no rules what it means to be a relay, other than you need to speak the protocol. But as to what data you're going to accept or what data you're going to give out, how long you're going to retain data, there are no rules in there. That's just potentially any relay can relay any type of message, potentially, but it's actually in the restriction that the relay or the moderation or the policy that the relay applies is where the function starts to emerge. So you could be and we have all these dimensions, right, as to who can access the relay, for what type of data the relay can be accessed, what type of subjects or content or types of discussions the relay can be accessed or used, and for what amount of time. So you can have a relay that says, okay, we'll retain the data for 1 day. And the function of that relay is just to get it out there to the other person. And then if you want to have it being maintained for a longer time, you're going to have to take care of that in a different way. But the function of that relay is it's a really good relay. It's like online 24/7, 99.9999% of the time. It's really super duper fast. But the only sacrifice you're going to make is that it's only going to retain your data for 1 day, and then it's going to throw away the data because it doesn't want to store a whole bunch of things. And then on the other side of the spectrum, we might have a relay that says, I'll just try to restore your stuff till the heat death of the universe, but my connection is pretty slow, and I might not be online all the time, so you're just going to have to give me your stuff whenever it is that I'm online, right? But at least I'm going to try to store your stuff all the time. You can have free relays, you can have paid relays. You can pay them by money. You can have relays that only accept stuff from certain people because of whatever reason, maybe because they like them, maybe because they have PhDs, maybe because they are left-handed. You can have relays that only store conversations about frogs. Maybe you have relays that only store pictures or only store tweets or only store articles. There is no rule as to what this relay has to do other than speak the language. And because you're not tied to a particular relay, you can always go to another relay. And this goes back to this point where, but the relay themselves, they don't have to take into any abstract notions of common good or their users into account. They can just say, this is my policy, this is how I work, and this is how I function, and you can use me or not use me. Does it make sense?
I'm just thinking it does make sense. Okay. And I was just thinking that in this case, you can be subject to indirect censorship in the context of historical erosion of information, because this sounds like a probabilistic memory model. Relays can hold information, as you said. Some yes, some don't. If you're not really into it and you're not choosing, maybe an automatic, it just assigns automatically to whichever goes, but it's not guaranteed is going to be there. So this can be used by people or even governments to say something, and then when the populace wants to have access, oh, this is what you said, oh, it doesn't exist anymore, but you have to, take our word that it existed. So it's like a historical erosion of information, which in a way is censorship. Maybe what you said, maybe I don't know if the relays can be manipulated, perhaps not, I assume, but does it make sense how maybe some planned erosion of information is in a way censorship?
But this erosion of information is a fact of the universe, Francisco. What alternative are you proposing where this is not the case?
I don't know. I haven't thought of that. I'm just playing devil's advocate here. I'm just testing the relays.
The simple fact of the reality is, it's just a matter of, are the bits stored on some medium, like the hard drive, right? So are the bits on a hard drive? And if you want to have it more redundant, you store it on more hard drives, and you store it on multiple locations. So now the hard drives, one of the hard drives is in America, one of the hard drives is in Europe, one of the hard drives is in a vault in the Alps. If you this whole idea of data availability and data storage is just a game of hard drives. More hard drives, more redundant hard drives, better quality hard drives, putting guards in front of the hard drives, giving guns to the guards in front of the hard drives, putting air defense systems around the hard drives, right? It's a very concrete physical reality of how do we prevent the bits from rotting by putting more effort into keeping the bits alive. And that's it. That's just the core reality of this world, and it's also the reason why NOSTR just embraces this fact. It's not going and says we're not going to give you any guarantees, but you're absolutely free to apply whatever effort into maintaining data that you want. And the other part is NOSTR is better in this context for a couple of ways. So one of the ways is that I've explained how data is not location dependent anymore, right? So you're not relying on the thing being on Twitter. It doesn't matter on what relay you find it, because it's signed by you, so you can locally verify the authenticity. Whereas a tweet, the authenticity of a tweet can only be verified by going to x.com, because it is x.com that will in the first will give you the tweet, and second will say that this tweet was actually authentic and actually by that user, etc., etc. So so it's stuck to a location. With NOSTR, it's not stuck to a location. It can exist anywhere. The second part is it's also stuck to time. There is this time window where where a tweet can be verified, and that time window is the existence of x.com. The moment x.com stops existing, if X goes out of business, the ability for the world to verify if a tweet was real stopped.
Right, true.
Whereas with NOSTR, this is not the case. So because it's the verification is based on the signature. So what happens is that if let's say you said the government posted something and then removes it and then starts to deny that it ever said the thing, right? Okay, if I have a local copy of that, I can just reload that local copy to a relay, and then say to the world, look at here, I have the copy here. It has their signature. Things can be removed from the internet, but can then be uploaded in a later moment in time. and it's still you're
Interesting.
still able to validate it as much as you were able to validate it before. Now, I do have to mention, from a technical perspective, we're all running under the assumption of the integrity of keys. So the cryptographic keys, they function by a user having a secret, and that implies that the secret is actually secret, right? So if the secret is not secret anymore, then anyone can start using that key. So that complicates a little bit things. The moment stuff gets, if those keys get compromised. There is this thing in relation to timestamping that we're able to do leveraging Bitcoin that I won't go into right now. So there is this complicating factor. I'm not saying that it's like a hard rock, watertight, guaranteed thing, but from a technical perspective, it's a lot better than it is what we have right now, right? And we can running under this assumption of the integrity of keys. So, and the other part is also with what NOSTR does, because I said it's like a protocol. Basically the rules in relation to these protocol just pertain to three different things. So the first thing is the use of these cryptographic key pairs. So we have views as to what cryptography it is that we're actually using. Doesn't matter necessarily what type of cryptography we use. There are like a whole bunch of options out there. The only thing is that we picked one, right? So we agreed this is the one that we're using. Okay, great. The second part is this interfacing with the relays that we're talking about. So you need some rules as to how to interface or to connect and interact with the relays. That could have been a whole bunch of options out there. We've picked WebSockets. That's the one, and a bunch of request response mechanisms. That's the rules that we decided on. Okay, great. That's the standard. So we have the cryptographic standard. We have the communication standard. The third one is the data format. So in NOSTR, basically, you have the publication, which is like the meat of the content that you created. So this could be your tweet or your article or whatever it is. The content consists out of two parts. So we have the human readable stuff. So these are the words. These are the letters making words, making sentences, making paragraphs, whatever that is understandable for humans. And then we have what we call the tags, which is like structured data, which is used for computers to interpret things and do stuff around it. So this is the content of my publication. And then there is this stuff around it, this metadata, let's say, that is universal for all of them. So we have the name. So who's the author of the publication? What was the time of the publication? What type of publication is this? So is it a tweet, or is it an article, or is it a video? Then there is this, and there is the signature behind the underneath the publication. This is the cryptographic signature, and there is this unique identifier, this string, just this name, this unique identifier for this publication. So this publication has one unique name, which is a random string of characters. Okay, because of this data structure, we now have this horizontal naming scheme for all the data out there in the world. And we have this universal structure for all the data out there, assuming that we like hyper adopt NOSTR, right?
Yeah.
So this means that it starts to become a lot easier to interpret and process data far in the future, because now we have there are all these different data standards out there. So if you have very old files, it becomes very difficult to actually do something with the file in modern operating systems, because you actually need the older operating system, and you need some very old program that only runs on a very old operating system in order to actually do something with the file. Whereas with NOSTR, at the very least, we have this basic structure. Maybe the stuff that happens, the content itself is a little bit more complicated, but at least we understand the context of, okay, this is author, this is the date and time that was published, and this is the type of thing that it's supposed to be. This is the signature, this is the universal identifier. Because everything now has a universal identifier, it can be referenced. So because that's also very difficult, right? If I store a file on my computer locally, I give it a name, like funny document .docx or whatever it is, or .txt. But that doesn't make sense to the outside world. Whereas and this is a process that's called hashing that produces this universal identifier. that is unique for every little bit of data out there that is within NOSTR. So we now have something that can be referenced. So if I dig it up in 1,000 years and I put the publication on a clay tablet, right? I put it in the ground in 1,000 years, they dig it up. They retranscribe it into the computer and they can find, it's like, oh, wait, this is where they had all this conversation about this publication because it was referenced in all these other publications by using that unique identifier.
That's cool. That's cool. That's so cool. However, since you mentioned hashing, it just came to mind. Is the NOSTR protocol, rules, language, infrastructure, data, all these things that we just mentioned, could they be subject to malware, hacking, or hypothetical, a super evil AGI that just wants to manipulate and destroy? Or like, how safe is the system to this sort of like malicious malware or hacking, or
Well, I mean, this is supposedly quantum computing is a thing.
That's about to happen.
As they say, Francisco, I couldn't tell you. I'm not a quantum expert. I find it very hard to judge this field. I have some I'm skeptical as to how far that bird will actually fly. We'll see when it get there. I guess the only risk is like the quantum risk. Not so much from maybe from a hashing perspective, mostly from the signature stuff. So it can start to produce fraudulent signatures or start to decrypt private information, because you can also, most of the stuff is public. NOSTR is very public in nature, but you can also still encrypt stuff. So then maybe with quantum, that stuff can be decrypted. So yeah, it's most of the danger is this supposed quantum angle that comes in, and maybe that's a thing. Supposedly there also exist these quantum resistant algorithms. So if that's the case, we'll just switch and start using quantum resistant algorithms. I mean, there are more problems to think of when this quantum stuff is real than
bigger than this,
or social media profiles. So
more existential things,
right?
Yeah. Okay, Wouter, last question. What do you want to be remembered for?
What do I want to be remembered for?
Yes.
Well, you're directly addressing my conscience here, because I'm here pretty selfishly. So I'm here to promote NOSTR. So I want to. I personally want to be remembered for very selfishly promoting NOSTR. I guess that's the. I don't want to be remembered for. I want NOSTR to be remembered.
Right. So this is completely altruistic for the good of humanity.
Yes, correct.
You have no gain in this.
No. Well, yeah, my gain is like I really want, like I'm using NOSTR, so I want the rest of the world to start using it as well. It's so much better than these silly platforms. But I also think that it's in everybody's interest ultimately to start doing so. So, and like, I'm not selling anything, because it's like I'm talking about a protocol. There is nothing to sell. And I'm also not doing a call to action in that sense. Like, I'm not saying that anyone needs to start using this thing, because there's a little bit of complexity in terms of adoption, right? I mean, we're early in the sense that you're probably, if you're an early adopter type person, you're going to stick around. If you're not an early adopter type person, you're just not going to stick around anyway. You're going to download the app. You're going to look at it for 5 minutes and gonna find some friction, or not gonna find the people you find interesting right away or immediately, or they're simply not there, whatever it is, and you're gonna leave it to 5 minutes. And then what was the point of you downloading the thing anyway in the first place? So I'm just here trying to explain. That's my purpose here. Just so people, your audience is aware of, okay, this thing exists. I sort of understand what this thing is about, and then hopefully somewhere along there in their future they come across it again, and then it's their time to the time makes sense for them to start using the thing.
It definitely raised some awareness to me. I was clueless. I was trying to read all these things online. Did it make sense? It does make sense now to some degree.
That's good.
And I'm glad we had this conversation, because if this becomes a thing, I will have quite a good understanding of it itself. So it feels good. It's nice. I like it. It was very, very interesting. I had so many more questions, but I guess just gonna cut it here for time's purpose. But it's been an awesome conversation. Thank you so much for being on the show, man.
My pleasure, Francesco.